When an avoidant sees you again after a long silence, the first thing that happens is not what you think. It is not the smile, not the words, not even the eye contact. It is the shock they try to hide before their face has time to catch up. In 1 second, memory wakes up. Distance breaks. The story they told themselves about being over it starts to crack. They may look calm, but inside, something has already moved. Something old, something unfinished. And if you watch closely, you will feel it before you fully see it. Because silence does not always remove emotion. Sometimes it only buries it deeper. Then one meeting brings it all back to the surface at once. This is where most people miss the truth. They think no reaction means no feeling. But with an avoidant person, the deepest reaction is often the quietest one. Their chest tightens, their breath shifts, their mind begins to race. One part of them wants to stay controlled. Another part is already pulled into the past. So if you have ever wondered what really happens in that first moment, stay with me, because what they do immediately can tell you more than anything they say later, and the deeper this connection once was, the stronger this silent reaction becomes. What happens next is subtle, but once you see it, you will never unsee it. When an avoidant sees you again after a long silence, their inner world does not move in the usual way. Something inside begins to rise before they can slow it down, a feeling they cannot easily name, a feeling they do not fully want to face. They stand there trying to look composed, maybe even distant, yet inside them everything is already shifting. Memory returns, fear returns, and with it comes a quiet form of longing they thought time had erased. In that moment, they become aware of the distance they once created and the strange familiarity that never truly left. For a brief second, they realize the story they built about you, about the past, about why they pulled away, was never as solid as they wanted to believe. Your presence exposes that, softly but clearly. They were never fully untouched. They were never completely detached. Seeing you again forces them to face what they hoped silence had buried. There is always a nearly invisible moment, right before words begin, where everything they pushed down starts pressing upward. Their first reaction rarely shows in an obvious way. It usually does not appear as a big expression or a dramatic move. It happens inside, in that small flicker where recognition meets emotion, and emotion hits the wall of old defenses. That is the real beginning, and if you keep listening, the next layer becomes even more revealing. Their mind reacts before logic has time to organize anything. Something shifts, like a door they once shut tightly, now trembling under pressure they thought was gone. They feel a quiet shock, not because they never imagined this meeting, but because the subconscious does not truly erase someone who once touched parts of them they were not ready to understand. This first response is fast, instinctive, and deeply tied to emotional patterns built over years. It is the clash between longing and fear, connection and self-protection, memory and control. Almost immediately, they try to steady themselves because emotional exposure feels dangerous to them. Their emotional world has often been something they learn to hide, sometimes even from themselves. So when you appear again, they try to press those rising feelings back into silence. It may show as a slight pause in breathing, a brief tightening in the chest, or a gaze that drifts away a second longer than normal. On the outside, it looks small. On the inside, everything is in motion. They feel the echo of what once lived between you. Even if they fight it, the body remembers what the mind tries to deny. The body reacts before thought catches up. That is why their first response is rarely expressive. It is not a big hello. It is not instant warmth. It is a private internal shift where protective habits suddenly collide with unresolved emotion, and once that happens, the rest of the interaction is shaped by it, whether they admit it or not. For someone with avoidant tendencies, closeness has always carried tension. They want it like anyone else, but they also connect it with risk. Risk to independence, risk to identity, risk to control. So when they see you again, their subconscious recognizes you as someone who once crossed into emotional territory they usually guard carefully. That recognition creates contradiction in an instant. Warm familiarity rises beside caution. Emotional memory appears next to defensive instinct. One part of them feels drawn in, another part pulls back at the same time. This split happens in a fraction of a second, but its effect lingers. They often try to explain the moment away in their own mind so they can regain balance. They may tell themselves it means nothing, that the past has no real weight. that no emotion has been stirred. But logic cannot fully silence what has already been activated. The reaction stays because it did not begin in logic. It began in emotional imprinting. Something about you still exists inside their internal memory system, even if it has been buried under time, routine, and distance. Avoidant people often underestimate how deep their own feelings run until something forces those feelings back up. Seeing you again becomes one of those moments. Suddenly, curiosity and hesitation live in the same space. Longing competes with restraint. Soft awareness rises against carefully built distance, and the silence that came before only makes it stronger. That silence did not erase the meaning. It only made the return hit harder, and this next part matters even more than most people realize. Another process begins under the surface almost right away: observation. Not in a cold or calculated way, but in an automatic, protective way. They start reading the moment without seeming to do it. They notice your posture, your face, your tone, your energy. They register whether you feel open or closed, calm or tense, distant or emotionally present. They also sense whether there is expectation in your presence, whether you want something, whether this moment carries pressure. This scanning happens quickly, almost like instinct, because they are trying to measure emotional safety before the interaction goes further. Avoidant people often become highly sensitive to emotional cues, even if they look detached from the outside. Their defenses sharpen their awareness. They notice whether there is emotional weight in the space between you or whether the atmosphere feels lighter than before. They try to judge whether this moment could lead to emotional depth they are not ready to handle. At the same time, they wonder how you have changed during the silence. Do you still carry the connection? Have you moved on? Is there still something unfinished here? Curiosity exists beside caution, and that mix creates internal tension. They are not only observing you, they are also observing themselves. They notice whether your presence creates calm or pressure inside them. They try to keep balance by reading the outside world while managing the inner one. Even if they appear still, their attention is active. They are decoding signals, managing distance, and trying to stay in control of what feels emotionally unpredictable. This is why their eyes can soften for 1 second and then quickly pull away. That softness is the emotional pull. The withdrawal is the fear. Their scanning is not really about judging you as a person. It is about judging whether this interaction will ask for openness they are not ready to give. And the deeper truth is simple. The more you mattered to them, the more intensely they scan. If you had no emotional weight, the moment would stay shallow and easy. But when someone still matters, their awareness gets sharper. They become more alert to details. They look for signs of pressure because expectation challenges their sense of freedom. At the same time, they also look for signs of safety because the wish for connection never fully disappears just because it has been suppressed. Both movements exist together and both are real. They may also compare who you are now to who you were the last time they saw you. Do you seem steadier, more distant, more self-assured, more peaceful? Your growth changes how safe or how intense this reunion feels to them. If you seem grounded and emotionally balanced, some of their inner tension may ease. If you seem heavy, hurt, or full of unspoken emotion, they may feel pressure rising fast, as if they could be pulled back into something they once escaped. That is why your stillness matters. Your energy matters. Even before the real conversation begins, they are already forming a decision about how open or how close they will allow themselves to be, and that decision shapes everything that follows. Then the body starts speaking in ways their words will not. When they meet you after a long gap, their spoken lines often sound normal, maybe even flat, but their real reaction leaks through small signals they do not fully control. You might see it first in their eyes. Avoidant people often struggle to hold steady eye contact when emotion gets activated. If you were meaningful to them, you may notice a quick softening in their gaze, followed by immediate withdrawal. They look, then look away. Not because they do not care, but because the intensity is hard to hold. Their eyes can carry recognition, memory, and emotion that has not fully settled. Even a tiny delay before they look directly at you can mean something. It may show that your presence has triggered more inside them than they expected. Their breathing can change too. It may deepen, pause, or lose rhythm for a moment. They might clear their throat, exhale sharply, or adjust their breathing before they answer. These small reactions show the body trying to regulate while emotion moves underneath. Their shoulders may rise slightly, their jaw jaw may tighten, their arms may cross without conscious intent. These are protective responses, not always rejection. Their voice can shift as well. Some become softer, some become overly formal, some use humor, small talk, or light detachment to keep the moment from getting too deep. Yet under all of that, tension and warmth can still be heard. In an avoidant person, the voice often becomes the place where control and vulnerability quietly fight for space. Micro-expressions reveal even more. A brief smile that disappears too fast, a softening around the eyes, a slight tension in the face, a quick drop in posture. These tiny shifts can show internal emotion before their defenses fully return. Many avoidant people believe they hide their feelings well, and often they do, but the unconscious still leaks through. There may be a flash of relief they instantly suppress, a moment of sadness that passes across the face and vanishes, a brief warmth that gets covered by restraint. These signs last only a second, but they matter. Posture changes too, depending on how activated they feel. They might lean away or take a small step back while trying to stay polite and composed. This is often emotional regulation under pressure, not cold rejection, but sometimes the opposite happens. They may unconsciously lean in, pulled toward familiarity before their mind fully approves it. Their body may angle toward you, even if their eyes avoid staying there for long. Hands become expressive under subtle stress. They may fidget, adjust clothing, touch the face, rub the neck, or hold the hands together too tightly. These movements help release the tension building inside. Even silence becomes meaningful. If they pause before responding, hesitate in the middle of conversation, or avoid eye contact while listening, it can mean the moment is affecting them more than they want to show. Stay with this, because the next shift is where the emotional truth becomes harder for them to ignore. A deeper change happens when they realize you are not the same person they once knew. Maybe you have grown. Maybe you feel more centered. Maybe you carry yourself with more peace, more clarity, more self-respect. That kind of change can quietly unsettle them. Many avoidant people build inner stories that justify emotional distance. Stories about why closeness felt too much, why withdrawal felt necessary, why stepping back was the only way to feel safe. These stories help them keep psychological order, but when they meet a changed version of you, those stories may stop feeling fully true. That can create quiet disorientation inside them. If you seem stronger without being hard, softer without being needy, and calm without chasing them, their old explanations begin to lose strength. They may start to wonder whether they misunderstood you or even themselves. This part is powerful because it does not need drama. Growth speaks loudly without raising its voice. When they see that you are no longer frozen in the old dynamic, they can no longer rely on the same emotional map. That creates tension, but also curiosity. They may feel respect rising where certainty used to live. They may notice that your presence feels different now, less pressure, more depth, more grounded, and when an avoidant person senses that they no longer hold the same emotional power over you, something important shifts. The interaction stops being about the old pain alone and starts becoming a mirror. They begin to see not just who you are now, but what they avoided in themselves. That realization can be more intense than any direct conversation because it reaches them before they can defend against it. This is also why they often become more self-aware around you. They start monitoring how they look, how they sound, how much they reveal, whether they seem affected, whether they are holding enough distance. That internal self-check can become constant during the interaction. It creates pressure to appear controlled while emotion continues moving underneath. There is usually an unspoken awareness that you still matter in some form, even if they never say it out loud. That awareness creates inner tension. It reminds them that not everything has been emotionally resolved, not everything was truly finished. If the silence between you was long, they may have believed time alone would weaken the connection. They may have told themselves that distance would reduce the emotional charge, but when they stand in front of you again, that belief can fall apart fast. The silence collapses, suppressed feeling, unfinished emotional threads, and avoided truths begin to return. Their defenses rise, not because you are dangerous, but because you represent a part of their emotional life they never fully settled. This can make them seem extra composed, extra measured, or strangely hard to read, but underneath they may be feeling more than ever. And here is the part many people miss. Sometimes their restraint is not proof of indifference. Sometimes it is proof of impact. The stronger the internal movement, the more they may try to regulate it. That does not mean you should chase or force the moment. It means the quiet can be more loaded than it appears, and what they do next often reveals whether the wall is still winning or slowly beginning to crack. If they sense safety, even a little, they may soften in small ways first. Their tone becomes warmer, their body stops pulling away, their answers grow a bit less guarded, the conversation becomes more present, less mechanical. They may ask a question that seems casual, but carries hidden interest. They may remember small details. They may linger a second longer than needed. These are not random things. They are careful openings. Avoidant people usually do not move toward vulnerability in a dramatic way. They move in inches. They test the emotional ground. They check whether closeness can happen without losing themselves. They watch whether you respect space without turning cold. They notice whether you can stay calm without creating pressure. If that safety is there, they may become more available than you expected, though still subtly. But if they feel blame, emotional heaviness, or silent demand, the opposite often happens. They may stay physically present while withdrawing inward. Their tone turns flatter, their face becomes harder to read, their answers shorten, they begin protecting themselves before anything even fully unfolds. This is why the emotional atmosphere matters more than perfect words. They are reading the energy behind the words. They are asking, often without knowing it, will this cost me too much? Will this pull me into something I cannot manage? Or can I be here without drowning in it? And here is the retention point you cannot miss. The answer to those questions often decides the entire reunion before the deeper conversation even starts. What happens in those first minutes shapes whether they close further or slowly let a little more of themselves be seen. Even after the moment passes, the impact usually does not end there. This is important. Avoidant people often process emotion late. What looks like calm in the moment may turn into deep internal activity later when they are alone and no longer trying to manage their expression. After seeing you, they may replay the encounter in their mind. Your face, your tone, your energy, what you said, what you did not say. They may think about how different you seemed. They may notice the feelings that came up and try to make sense of them after the fact. Sometimes this leads to more distance because they feel stirred and want to regain control. But sometimes it leads to quiet curiosity, even a pull toward reconnection. The key thing is this: the meeting stays with them longer than they will likely admit. They may not text right away. They may not show obvious emotion. They may even act normal, almost too normal. But internally, something can keep moving. Old emotion can become active again. Questions can surface. Regret can appear in places they kept numb. They may wonder what could have been different. They may wonder whether you still see them clearly. They may wonder whether it is too late to approach in a different way. This is why one calm meeting after a long silence can carry more power than months of chasing. It bypasses the old pattern. It gives reality a chance to replace the story in their head. And once that happens, they can no longer rely on emotional distance as easily as before. The image of you begins to live inside their thoughts again, and that can change the meaning of everything. But let's go even deeper, because this is where the emotional contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. An avoidant person may genuinely feel relief when they see you and, at the very same time, feel pressure because that relief means the bond was never fully gone. They may feel drawn to your steadiness and scared of what that draw could wake up. They may want contact and still resist the vulnerability that contact brings. This is why their behavior can look mixed, warm in 1 second, reserved in the next, present, then distant. It is not always a game. Often it is an internal split playing out in real time. One part of them wants the comfort of connection. Another part fears the loss of control that connection can create. And if they have spent years surviving through emotional self-containment, even healthy closeness can feel risky at first. So when they see you again after silence, they are not only responding to you, they are responding to everything closeness has meant in their life. The past enters the room with you. Old defenses enter too. but so does the possibility of something different. This is why your grounded presence can be so powerful. You do not need to perform. You do not need to prove. You do not need to force depth into the conversation. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm enough that the moment can breathe. Let them feel the contrast between old fear and new safety. Let them notice that your energy is no longer asking, chasing, or collapsing. That contrast alone can create more movement inside them than any speech ever could. So what do they do immediately when they see you again after a long silence? First, they feel, quietly, strongly, more than they show. Then they regulate, they scan, they assess, they protect, they look for danger, but they also look for warmth. They watch you, and at the same time they watch themselves. Their body gives away small truths before their words can catch up. Their eyes shift, their breath changes, their voice tightens or softens. Their posture tries to manage the pull, and if they realize you have changed, become steadier, stronger, less emotionally reactive, the impact deepens, the old story weakens, their inner certainty shakes. Something unspoken begins to reopen, not always enough for instant action, not always enough for full honesty, but enough to create movement, enough to disturb the numbness, enough to make silence stop feeling simple. This is the truth most people never see. The reunion is rarely just a reunion for them. It is a confrontation with memory, with emotion, with unfinished inner conflict, and with the version of themselves that once stepped back when closeness felt too real. That is why the first reaction matters so much. It reveals the hidden battle between feeling and defense, and if you notice something subtle in them, something they tried hard to cover, you were probably not imagining it. You were witnessing the moment their guarded world shifted before they had time to hide it. And once that shift begins, even in silence, nothing inside them stays exactly the same again.